afternoon, everyone. This is Julian Caro here. I'm the Director of Solution Sales in EMEA. In this webinar, we are going to discuss the outstanding work done by our panelists and their respective teams on designing and managing the world's largest single-room speaker system at the Royal Albert Hall in London, United Kingdom. Allow me to introduce everyone that has joined us as a panelist in this webinar. We have Ollie Jeffrey, Head of Production and Technical at the Royal Albert Hall. We have Steve Jones, Application and Support Team Leader at D&B Audio Technic. George Vase, Project Manager and Solution Architect at SFL. And Kieran Walsh, Director of Applications Engineering, EMEA. I'd just like to, first of all, I think to set the scene is really to ask Ollie for a brief introduction and explanation of what the Royal Albert Hall is for those of us who are not based in the UK and might not be quite so familiar with it, and maybe talk us through what led to this work that they carried out a few years ago.
Thank you, Julian. So the Royal Albert Hall, for those of you who don't know, built in 1871. It was a vision of Prince Albert, who was married to Queen Victoria. And really the hall is very much there for the nation and for the world, really, to entertain the world. And the variety we have at the Royal Albert Hall is absolutely phenomenal. Many of what you will know, we have the BBC Proms, which is the largest classical musical festival in the world. That also ranges from classical shows to rock and pop shows. So really worldwide artists such as Eric Clapton has done a performance there for many years on a regular basis. Cliff Richard has performed there many a times. I think there aren't many artists who don't want to say that, you know, that they want to perform at the hall because of that intimacy and what it achieves and what it does for them. Cirque du Soleil is something we're very proud of at the Royal Albert Hall as well every year. In 2018, we actually was our busiest year, and we did 401 events in the main auditorium. What many people do not realize is that as well as the main auditorium, we have other spaces where we do a lot of our education program, where we support charities. We support about 250,000 people a year in our education and outreach program, as well as what we call beyond the main stage. So we do another 1,200 events in smaller spaces. That can be story time, that can be classical coffee mornings, that can be late night jazz, that can be comedy, that can be some theatre. So the hall as a building, not just its auditorium, is very much a very versatile space. And again, as I say, this is for really everyone, for the nation and the world. And as you can see, we very much pride ourselves in being the world stage. Something we wanted to improve was our audio. And the hall is constantly looking at ways it can improve. And we wanted to bring our audio in-house. Now, why did we want to do that? We felt that what was being offered was good. There was a system that was supported by a really great company who supported us for many years. They hadn't done anything wrong. The hall was starting to venture into producing more of its own shows. So out of those 401 performances, we would be producing about 70 or 80 of our own shows as well. So that progression to producing shows was important to us. But mainly the hall prides itself in providing this life-enriching experience for everyone. And that's from the box office. How do we support people at the box office? On the internet, improving our website. How can we improve that journey up from the tube, from the bus stop? How can we improve our restaurants, our bars, and all of that? And we felt there was something to entertain that audience. So our control over that audio experience, it was limited at times, and actually that high standard that I've spoken about, it didn't meet our high standards, and we wanted to improve that. Now, what's the data behind that? And this is where we come on to the problems, and this is no reflection on all the hard work that our industry does, but actually in doing so many events, it doesn't give everyone the time to achieve everything. To put a new system in at 7 in the morning, comes out at 2 AM, another system comes in, and that had some challenges for anybody who came in through no one's fault. And the customers knew it, they experienced it, and as you can see, they vocalized it. And now social media at the moment is our best friend, but in some ways, this is not our best friend. If you look probably at the top right, it's a slide I always focus on about Alfie Boe performing at the Hall, and someone comparing it to another venue, the Sage in Gateshead. Saying that the Sage in Gateshead is like quality years ahead of us. You can see other things. ABC at the Royal Albert Hall, sound is awful. The Daily Telegraph, a UK paper, saying really bad, atrocious sound quality. That is not what the Royal Albert Hall strive to do. That's not what we strive to achieve, and that was disappointing for us. So we wanted to improve that from a sound perspective. That's our motivation. To achieve that, we created a vision in what we wanted to achieve. So we wanted to create an unforgettable experience for everyone. We wanted everyone, the minute they walked in that auditorium, to feel the show. They wanted to be part of that show. And a way to do that is to really improve the audio. We want them raving, not ranting. So that first slide, they're ranting about our really bad audio, and very soon I will hopefully show you a slide where they're raving about the audio. We call ourselves the world stage. We are the world stage. We get the best acts in the world. So we should be a world leader in the quality of sound. And that was one of our most important things. Now, ultimately, this was going to cost the Hall some money. If we got some change out of this, then that would be great. Happy days. So if we could get a little bit of money in the bank, that would be great. And the one really key thing here is the Hall is a charity. So the Hall doesn't receive any government funding or anything. So any money we make from selling tickets, from the bars, from the restaurants, from anything else goes back into the Hall to improve it. So all the money we make goes back to the Hall. It's a Grade 1 listed building. It's 150 years old. It costs a lot of money to keep the building running. So it all goes back into one pot and distributed to improve that audience experience. Again, I mentioned this, the Hall was starting to progress from receiving to producing shows. We will always have receiving shows, but we also are producing shows. We wanted to support that more effectively. Many of you on here will probably be fully aware the Hall has some challenging acoustics. 150 years ago, the Victorians, we love them, but they didn't really think about the acoustics. So there are some challenges for all of us on this. And we wanted to improve that. And that's kind of a second part, and I could possibly talk about that later if there's time. But that was part of our vision. The event risk. I've mentioned something we're very proud of is being one of the busiest venues in the world. 401 events in the auditorium. With that comes some challenges. Different show coming in, different PA system, different lighting system, different staging system. Actually, if we could get the best system possible, more people would use it, and it comes to that point that we would then provide a world-class solution. And for us, that's really important. And that was our vision in how we wanted to achieve this project, working with everyone. Now, just because obviously we need to focus on the core parts of this presentation. I mentioned earlier about success. That was our vision. Just jumping ahead, did we achieve that vision? Orchestrally, yes. So many different shows from all around the world have been using the system and using our new in-house team. So we didn't just provide a new system, we bought lots of other equipment, microphones, monitoring equipment, and we also provided a new team. That team are absolutely amazing, and they have really pushed this forward to provide not just a great system, but actually a great audio service. Let's go back, I said about an audio solution. That's what we're now achieving. You can see some really good things that we're proud of here from an orchestral point of view. If I then talk about rock and pops, again, I talk about a versatility of a system. That's what was really important. You can see some really big names have also used this system, used our sound service because they believe in it from all areas, from D&B, from the Dante support, from the support we have from SFL. Really important that we have that. And the results are here. This is the results of people who want to use it, and the amount of different type of, as I say, the versatility of this system. And we're really proud of that over the last sort of year and a half, especially the Beach Boys. We all love the Beach Boys, so very proud of that.
Ollie, can I ask you to clarify a point, if I may? You mentioned that you're very proud of them using your system. Can you explain perhaps why that means what that means in a live venue of your size using your system. Some people might not understand why that is important and why
I
that
think,
perhaps is different from what other people do.
yeah, I think that's a good question, Julian, and it really goes back to my point about, you know, we're 5,500 seater auditorium, so straight away, to be an orchestral concert hall would be a lot less from a capacity point of view. So there's challenges acoustically, and also the challenge, just time. Our biggest challenge is time. And for us to be able to have the right brands on this project, it shows that if people are using it, that we got it right, that we're using the right brands, and the right people have that security and knowledge of knowing that, yeah, they got this right, and they believe in it. And I think that's what it's so important to me for people using it. The biggest thing is the audience, actually. I want the audience to walk out and go, wow, I really, you know, I was really part of that. So I think for us, it's making sure we got the right system and the right people involved. And that's why I'm so proud that so many people have used it, because I kind of think in people using it, we got it right. And that hopefully that answers your question, Julian.
Well, I think my question was, is it normal that in a venue such as yours, people would rely on the in-house system, or would they typically be perhaps ripping it out and replacing it with their own that they've toured around the world with?
Yeah, I think tours, you know, tours is a real challenge, and something we had to work on. But I think there are some venues around the world who have in-house systems, and it works very well. And there are some more the arenas where, yeah, it's a completely blank canvas, and there is, you know, and actually they have to bring in the right system, or because they've got it on the back of the truck and it makes sense and they're touring it. So I think it is quite unique to have a really good in-house system used for so many shows as a venue, you know, from a global point of view. But I do know other venues that have them, and we talk to some of those venues in this process as well. Hopefully that answers that.
Yes.
So at the beginning, I showed you a slide that I said about raving, not ranting. And whilst we want the industry to really be part of this, actually the audience are our customer. For all of us, they're the people paying, and that's who we believe in really being satisfied by this. So since we then, if you remember that first slide, there was a lot of negativity. If we now go on to this slide, what do the audience think now? And we noticed even when we put the system in, before we announced it, there was a good 6 months before we really announced this, but we'd been using it. We actually started to notice on Twitter people bringing up sound without us even publicizing we've put a new system in. That for me, and I think the others here, Steve and George, was probably one of our proudest moments. We hadn't told anyone about this, but people were saying that the sound quality excellent. We could hear every single word. The sound quality is wonderful. You can all see it here. And actually, if you go back to that vision and the big thing we wanted to do, this is a big tick for me. This makes us go, yeah, we did it. There's more things we can do acoustically, but actually, as a stage one, this was probably my proudest slide in many ways. Our customer is saying they're happy without us even telling them that we've changed the product. So for me, that was a real success. And the press. So we all love the press at the moment, maybe. But actually, what did the press think? Well, you know what? Our press team, D&B's press team, SFL's press team, everyone did an amazing job. I remember saying, I want the world to know about this. Well, you know what? The world did know about it. We were on CBS News, Heart FM, some real big stuff all around the world. And actually, I talk about that audience slide being really proud. This slide made me really proud as well, because we're an industry that sometimes we're forgotten. And Steve always says to me, you know, people don't complain about the sound, we've done a good job, and he's absolutely right. But actually on this one, for all of us, for all the sound engineers, all the lighting engineers, all the stage crew, we were getting a lot of PR on something people had worked incredibly hard on. And for me, that was a really big achievement as well, in that actually the press were interested in this. Our press team even now say, we've never known anything like it. So many people being so interested in some speakers. And I say to them, well, actually, it was a lot more than some speakers. And I think Steve and George will really talk about the bones of that. But the audience slide, this slide, actually make me so proud to be part of something really special, and makes us go, yeah, we did it, we nailed it, and we achieved that vision.
That is so impressive. That is so impressive. I'd always heard about the sound difficulties or the issues that you had in the Royal Albert Hall, and then I started hearing the same thing. What you're showing, people saying, "No, it's brilliant now. It's brilliant. It's superb." And so I'm delighted to be able to speak with you and with Steve and with George about this topic. Steve, from DMB's perspective, I mean, you were the ones who actually spec the system. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the Albert Hall, I think, put us and various other manufacturers through a pretty rigorous tender process that was a little bit more rigorous than I think any other tender process we'd been through. So they pushed us to the limits to prove would we deliver on what they wanted, and we were lucky enough to come out at the end of that with the chance to be able to show could we do what we said we could do. So.
Yeah, I think you weren't the only lucky ones. I think the Royal Albert Hall were very lucky as well to have brought you two together. I think the results speak for themselves that it has been superb.
Don't tell him that, Julian.
Oh, sorry, but you've already. I mean, the price has been discussed. No, right. He can't change it now. In terms of the process for undertaking something like this. Now, we sometimes decide to upgrade a venue, or we decide to upgrade our own installations. But in a venue of this scale and this importance, how do you do it? Do you just think, okay, I'll try out these speakers, I'll try out those speakers, I'll try out this? Is that all there is to it, or is it a bit more complicated than that?
Yeah, I think as system designers, we have our dreams about what we could do with sound systems. And very often we're shackled to begin with by limitations on budget, on where we're allowed to put anything, on whether we're allowed to see speakers, on whether people are scared of big speakers versus small
but
speakers.
The Royal Albert Hall, surely it's just a big blank canvas. You can put anything anywhere you like. I mean, this was designed to hold several, hundreds and hundreds of kilograms of speakers, surely.
Well, luckily enough, actually, the Royal Albert Hall was designed to hold, I believe, the large monument that sits in Hyde Park on top of it, but it never quite made it on the roof. Therefore, the roof does have a huge amount of weight loading for us nowadays to put speakers in the roof, which is fairly useful. But I mean, you go into a project like this, and for pretty much anybody that kind of works within the UK sound industry, and I think beyond that around the world, yeah, we're all aware of the Albert Hall and the problems in so many ways acoustically, but also the affection in which people hold that venue, particularly artists who, there's a lot of DVDs you can buy of artists doing their flagship show, if you like, at the Albert Hall. You tread with care when you go into these kind of venues, and you have to treat the venue with respect, and the history of the venue and the culture of the venue, and the fact that this is a world leading venue. You don't get to do these very often. The good thing on this one was that the team that was assembled, despite the fact that the Albert Hall didn't have an in-house sound team, they assembled a team of advocates of very well established, very well respected people to guide them through that process, to help them decide which was the right decision, what were the important parts and performance brief, if you like. And in amongst that, getting that kind of very good design brief from a very well-respected bunch of people, the Albert Hall and Ollie and the rigging team and the lighting team allowed me to push them, whereas normally I'm not allowed to quite push so much. So if I believed in that, do you know what, we really need to do this if you want it to be world-class, they were open to that. I mean, none more so. I always give the lighting guy at the Albert Hall, Rich, a big shout out, because we could not have put speakers where we put them, which were the prime positions for the audience, if the lighting team hadn't have given us some real estate that was important to them. So it was a real collaboration on all sides, but a real design process of modeling, of working alongside the consultants of Sandy Brown and a guy there, Stephen Stringer and his team, of meeting the acoustic briefs they were after, proving that we could hit the performance, whilst also taking into account the things that modeling and calculations and simulations can't tell you that a sound system needs. So imaging, for instance, we're big believers at DMB in that I don't want to connect to a speaker that's not in the right place as the show that I'm looking at. I need to be able to connect to a show on a visual basis, but also the audio linked to that. So I need to put the right speakers in the right place for where I'm looking at, wherever I am in that room, which is fun and games in a room, the shape and geometry of the Albert Hall. And then we had so many hurdles to overcome in terms of the structures, the mushrooms in the roof, the what's above the mushrooms, the roof, the motors in the roof, everything else. It's an absolute full roof up there to try and fly anything that was fun and games to try and find solutions. So how did we do it? A lot of hard work, a lot of collaboration between a lot of different departments. I got to dream up a sound system of my dreams, and then SFL won the contract to install it and take my crazy design and try and make it a reality in terms of connecting it together and making it work.
Julian, if I can just, when Steve talks about his dreams, I'll give you an example of at 6 p.m., Steve's got an idea. At 10 p.m., there's a text coming through saying he's got another idea. And by 7 a.m., he's actually got a new idea of where the speakers can go. So, it was amazing for me, who I'm actually more of a lighting guy, to see that process and that design develop and adapt to the venue with, as Steve rightly said, phenomenal challenges. We're a grade 1 listed building. You can't just drill a hole in the plasterwork without getting heritage approval. So, we talk about dreaming. We did dream, and and the dream came true. And I think, we'll talk about SFL and that team in a minute, but to be able to dream and achieve so much was just amazing.
So am I right therefore in saying, Ollie, that as traditionally a lighting person, you now recognise the superiority of the audio crew?
I know what the word imagery and Dante means, and DS100, yeah, but I'm not sure I'm going to answer who's more superior.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah. Look, I think we can all infer what you actually think from
for this webinar. I'll take it that you're superior for the moment.
Oh, you are too kind. You are too kind. Yes, you are, and you're absolutely right. And you're absolutely right. Steve, going back to the implementation. You mentioned various organisations, including SFL, for where George is from. In terms of to start the project off, to take those measurements, what do you have to do in order to get an appreciation of the inherent acoustics of a venue? How long does it take? Is it just walking around making notes on a jotter, or is it a little bit more complicated than that?
I think it's a very big holistic view you have to take. You have to be good with the science. So we had a lot of data from Sandy Brown, who did a lot of capturing of measurements in the room and information there that really fed into our understanding of just how do the acoustics work in the room. I did a huge amount of modeling of direct sound in our own Rakeout software to look at, the best place to put speakers without considering room reflections, if you like, at a first basis. Then there's moving that into the world of ease for the kind of third-party independent view of a sound system, with the understanding of acoustics as well that's going on with a very complex room. Sandy Brown did a huge amount of the verifying of that, of basically, as a manufacturer, were we lying or not about what we said we could achieve? That was their role to keep us in check, if you like. And then there's a huge amount that you can model and look at science all day long, but there's an amount of sound. There's so much about sound we just simply don't know yet, and we can't explain easily in science, and you can't explain in modeling programs, that you can only kind of bring to the fore experiences of previous gigs. And how does an audience emotionally get involved with a concert? And if I move these speakers over here, what happens? And this vast bunch of engineers like this kind of thing, but there may be more classical guys like this kind of thing. So we had to roll years of experience into it. I've got years of going to see shows and being experienced in shows myself, the systems I put in at the Albert Hall. And then a lot of me and Ollie chatted for months and months, probably years to some extent, about the Albert Hall and what did the Albert Hall dream from a sound point of view? How did they experience sound? What's important to them on a sound basis? So that ultimately they were our customer. You could argue the ultimate customer is the audience, but they're in very good kind of connection with their audiences and what they perceive and experience. So Yeah, it's a long process, and there's science to put into it, there's emotion to put into it, there's knowledge of sound that can't translate to paper very well, and then there's experience and understanding of what all the engineers around want, because you need this to be a rider friendly system.
No, and I think, Julian, just going on that point with, you can put what you like on paper when you do a system design, and you can go, here's my system design, and it's going to sound amazing. For us, because we felt so passionate about this, and Steve talks about so much putting D&B and SFL through so much, we actually made them do live demos. So again, for me, Steve can show me all these lovely pictures and they're lovely, but actually I want to hear it. I want to know what it sounds like. So we went through a whole demo process. Then we changed the system. Then we did another demo. And then actually we took the decision to do a live demo on a show, which was Gladiator, with a live orchestra, and actually go, right, let's put this in. And thanks to the support from SFL, we put that system in temporarily to actually really feel, is this definitely what we want? And whilst that was perhaps in many ways a bonkers idea, I think we learned so much in doing that, in doing a live demo, and that was great for us. And Steve and George, I think, hated it, but it showed us so much about what the system was going to give us, and actually we all went, okay, this is right. We now believe in this, and that really helped Steve from a design point of view, I think, as well.
So I'm delighted that it's a great risk. It's a hell of a risk to try it live to demo it in a live environment. That takes some courage. I almost said a different word there, but I'm going to stick with courage. Steve, in terms of what was actually deployed at the Royal Albert Hall, the title of this webinar is the world's largest single room or single space venue. So what have you put in there that makes it sound so good? What's the technology that people are hearing and benefiting from?
Okay, so pictures speak 1,000 words, and rather than listen to my Yorkshire accent all day long trying to use coarse words to describe something very complex, let's show you in pictures.
Not wrong with that.
To just kind of run through the system very quickly. Basic level, there's front fills down at the front of the stage covering the first few rows, and then a kind of set of front fills that can also act as front fills for the back of the choir stalls. We have two sets of front fills, one larger set that's kind of a rock and roll style system, but then we also use our smaller 16C columns for a very thin, low profile front fill for classical concerts in particular, because they're a cardioid dispersion pattern. So they reduce spill backwards onto all the kind of mics that could be 2 foot, let's say, from those front fills. We then have a small hang of Y series per side for the choir stalls, for the main coverage of the choir stalls. Then we have 3 hangs of 12 deep V series. These cover the stalls up until the top box hits kind of the first, second row of the circle. I didn't want to point any further up because one of the issues historically is that when you try and cover this whole room from the main hanging positions, you just excite the room so much that upper gallery level bounces sound all over the place. I wanted to try and minimize and zone the system. So we have a left, center, right of 12 deep V series with then 8 deep hangs of V as outfills to the sides. Up in the air then we have 7 hangs of 6 deep Y series. Initially it was, I believe, 6 hangs we were going to try do this with. We did the Gladiator trial run and figured out actually just adding 1 more hang would really help us kind of have a bit of nip and tuck around some holes that were appearing that we'd like to fill. So we added the 7th hang there. All of these line array hangs are all using our array processing technology to even out the coverage. So 7 hangs there, which were fun to try and find the holes up through the mushrooms, up into the roof, and find gaps amongst the existing motors to fly all of that. So that was a challenge in itself that Alex, the main rigger there, probably didn't like me very much by the end of that process. But we got there, we found the space and found the positions. We then have 23 TI-10 point source loudspeakers, 1 for every gallery bay opening. Again, this was a fun bit because we stood at the rail of the gallery and I said to Ollie, it'd be really nice if we could drill some holes through that grade 1 listed plaster, at which point he laughed at me and said never. And I said, at least we could ask. If we don't ask, we won't get. And luckily we asked and we did get. So we were allowed to drill through that plaster work to mount these T10s. So the main house is effectively split into 3 levels. You've got the main level with the arena floor, the stalls, the 3 levels of boxes, and then the kind of first row of the circle. Then you have the hangs covering the circle, and then the T10s here covering the upper circle. Sorry, not the upper circle, the gallery. And then we've got cardioid subs, so that we're trying to minimize the amount of spill going backwards in a large reverberant room. We don't want to excite the back walls, but using SL subs to cover everywhere else in the room, from a couple of subs underneath the stage and then 4 flown in a mono center hang. So all in all, you can kind of, this picture does a good job of showing the zoning through the room from the main system. What this picture doesn't then show is I believe it's 338 4S's in the boxes. So in every box there, you have 1 speaker at the front as a delay speaker, just to get the kind of the detail into the box, which some of the side boxes in particular are visually shadowed from the stage. So they're obviously acoustically shadowed as well. So that gets the detail of the voice pushing into the back of the box. And then we've got 2 rear speakers in every box that, using our N-Space plugin within the DS100 kind of Soundscape world, we're adding ambience back into the rear of the box, so that as much as you're sat in a padded cell looking at a concert hall, we want you to feel like you're in a concert hall as well, with the reverberation attached. And it does really, when you turn that box system on and off, you go from this kind of feeling of being very closed in a box to suddenly it's like the roof's been lifted off and there's air and space again, and an envelopment. So there are 400 and I believe 60 something speakers in that room, with huge amounts of amplifier channels dotted all over the place. So it's all right for me to write all of this in paper and model it, but it was the SFL boys that had to try and put that in place and connect it together and make it all work.
Yeah, and but you know, it's what an estimate, George, a day and a half of work, that sort of time.
Yeah, 2 days tops. 2 days tops.
2 days tops. There you go. It's simple. He'll obviously try and drag it out a bit longer, but I'm sure it's relatively simple. So George, by the way, it's taken me a while in preparation for this call to remember to call you George. I practiced it, and every time I came to your name, there was a pause, and then I would say your name correctly. So I think I've managed to get it right now that I can say George without pausing. In terms of I mean, this is a great solution in terms of the speakers. What is being used to connect them all together? What is the mesh that joins them all?
We're using obviously Dante to connect all the loudspeaker farms together. We're using a redundant ring of fiber to connect the core 2 locations together, and then it's kind of a star network off that with nodes to get to some of the more remote locations in the circle, in the Grand Tier boxes and Logia boxes. So it's all in all. I mean, some of the numbers are impressive, some of the numbers aren't. We're using just 22 network switches, 1.6 kilometers of fiber and Cat6 cable, and then we segregate the network off in various places to do various different things. So whilst we're getting the audio there, we've got to get control data there. So we've got 8 VLANs, 8 full wireless networks, which stumbles up to be quite a large network. So we've got it's 320 discrete Dante inputs and 430 something outputs in total if we maxed everything out. Yeah, so the flow for the audio path is the audio comes into the system in a few various formats. So we've got the in-house consoles, Digico consoles. They can come in via an orange box into Dante. We've got some fantastic boxes by a company called Glen Sound, who I'd never heard of before. They're
UK
analog
company.
and AES. UK company, yeah, lovely guys. Support is top notch. Big shout out to them. They're analog and AES input-output boxes. So that's the main method people tend to use to get into the system with their whatever console they want. And then as of recently, you can now go direct in on. They've enabled direct in on Dante, so we're allowing people to go direct in Dante, which is really cool for as Soundscape and some of the some of the more modern loudspeaker
You're talking
technologies
about
come
performers
in.
here. You're talking
Yeah.
about the performers actually plugging in directly with Dante. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So I'll get onto some of the management stuff later on, but yeah, quite often we're now looking at D&B have had on tech cards for a few years now the Soundscape system. That requires discrete inputs for various instruments on stage. So you could be traditionally be looking at sending maybe a left-right subfill set of inputs into the system, 4 channels easy. Now we're talking about needing to send 30, 40, 50, 60 channels into the speaker system for the processors to work out where elements should appear. So being able to just talk straight on Dante, straight from your console into the system, from the artist console straight in is absolutely fantastic. And the sheer amount of products that are available make that even more possible.
So, I mean, obviously, one of the advantages of Dante is that incredibly large ecosystem, which includes D&B Audio Technic, Glensound that we've mentioned, Digico on the consoles, and I think there's microphones from various manufacturers, including a small American company, Shure.
Mainly DPA, from a mic point of view, Julian.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, that's obviously, this is the thing that everyone knows about Dante is that ecosystem that just, it's not even a competition any longer. But if we'd said this is going to be done with any other audio networking technology, what would have been the ramifications of trying to do it with something else? Any of the other solutions available?
I mean, something that became very apparent very early on in the process was we weren't going to need to do huge, complicated conversions between so many formats. Digico had a product to convert to Dante. The whole loudspeaker system using DS10s and DS100 matrix was all Dante. But it became very apparent very, very quickly that this was going to be quite a simple implementation. I say that and kick myself every time I remember it. So using another product that didn't have support from so many manufacturers. I mean, a headache, a huge headache. And it's probably still be there today.
It's been done. There's no need to have bad dreams about it. There's no need for nightmares. You've done it.
Yeah, I think we'd still be there.
In terms of the actual work carried out by SFL in implementing this, we joked about it taking a day and a half, 2 days tops, but really, what's the actual figure? Those were joke numbers, just in case anyone's thinking that they can do this in a day or two.
Yeah, the exact number of overnights escapes my memory. I'm sure someone can pop up in the comments and tell me. But this is a venue that does, Ollie, correct me if I'm wrong, is it 400 shows a year?
George, you obviously weren't listening at the beginning. 401 actually in 2018. So that was our busiest year, and I mean this was done in phases because the boxes that Steve Sport talks about comes later. But the guys spent about 6 months on site in terms of constant overnights. And what we should really highlight here is because we were doing so many shows, it wasn't that you could leave everything as it is. Every day was a new loading for the install team. So they pack up, they'd put it away, they'd come back the next evening, they'd pack up, they'd put it away. We built new cupboards for SFL in the corridors for all the amps. I know some people are asking about amp locations and all of that. And that in itself, SFL from an install point of view, as George talked about, just the volume of cable and being so busy. And remember at night, we've got to clean up, we've got caterers, we've got all that going on. Yeah. So 6 months really was the kind of core element of the install time.
Absolutely. And then, I mean, you could see it to the outsider. I'm going to suggest you probably didn't notice things happening, but it was wonderful seeing the pictures and seeing boxes just appear in the grand tier one by one. You'd see them whiz round, but like you say, Ollie, to the outsider,
no one noticed you were installing so many hundreds of speakers.
And Julian, that's the key point. You're absolutely right. And George is right. I remember each day I'd text someone and go, what did the guys do last night? And they go, well, there's 10 boxes that have got more speakers in. I'd be like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah, they look good. D&B spent a lot of time on getting them coloured and all of that. So they were, the right colour to the building. So there's so many quirky things that nobody knew about, and it's like, you know, these little people came in the night and just turned it around, and it was pretty impressive.
The elves
when
do
you
it.
actually, the elves did it, and they really did. So yeah.
George, if you don't mind, I've got a short video clip which your colleague Andrew sent to me of your installation. Do you mind if I play that through?
Yeah, of course, go for it.
that is an amazing amount of work. I mean, that is the fear of actually putting a drill into a listed monument. It must be tangible. You could probably smell the fear.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And that last slide could have carried on for ages. 336 times of that exact process, and it got harder as they went further up into the upper boxes. Pat Smith, who was a project manager on the job alongside Andrew Hardiman, jumped in the comments and told me it was 693 man days.
693. So that initial quotation of yours, estimate of 2 days, totally under-specking it, and you ended up with that many.
I'm fired. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I think when you've managed to get the contract out to that many days, you're far from fired, George. Far from fired. You mentioned, and to Ollie's point earlier on, how acts would turn up and would plug in. Now, traditionally, they would be plugging in, or perhaps in the old days, they would be plugging in using an analog solution. Actually, before I go to that point, we all know that Dante is based on standard Ethernet networking principles. Would this have been feasible if you were to think of this in an analog term or a digital term? Would this have been feasible doing it that way with this sort of channel count?
It would have been feasible. It would have been a lot more expensive, and the close attention would have had to be made to signal loss. Some of these runs are in excess of 100, 200 meters. So we'd have had, there would have been significant problems with keeping the audio quality at a level that was acceptable. A lot of these fiber runs are going up ducts with heavy, with heavy three-phase mains alongside dimming channels. It would have been a whole other kettle of fish for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And to Wally's point about the people plugging in, performers plugging in, and what they bring with them to carry out their performance. You mentioned now that people are plugging in directly with Dante, so people are performers are rocking up with Dante-enabled equipment ready to just plug in. And do they?
Yeah,
Is that what they do? They just plug in?
Absolutely. I think it's fair to say that originally the Dante system was installed as simply a method of getting drive from the inputs to the DS100, the processors, and then out to the loudspeakers and amplifiers. It's become so much more than that. We're sending, we're putting radio mics on the network to go back in through the orange box into the consoles. We're doing RF monitoring via Dante devices. It's gone from being, we put the Dante network in to do the drive, to actually the drive's just one part of this Dante network now. It's still the most significant part, but it's definitely, it's being used for so much more than we thought. And the whole system, in fact, I think everyone will agree, is being used in so many different configurations and ways that we never perhaps anticipated. We'll use bits of, you can even go back to the loudspeaker system. We use bits of this front field system, but then we want to put the subs here, or we want to add a bit of the rock and pop system in, and the same goes for the Dante network. Which brings us quite nicely on to actually about the original implementation went really smoothly. Straight off the bat when it was installed, following months after that, we couldn't believe. I remember there were so many text conversations. We couldn't believe what the take up was off this brand new system that no one had ever heard before. And acts were going, "Yep, I'll use that. Yep." It was unreal. We were pinching ourselves. But about a year on, it became apparent that actually this Dante system was an ever powerful thing, and had the ability to be really dangerous. Not maliciously, but people were making mistakes or network errors or anything like that. And so we started to look at Dante Domain Manager, which, for anyone that doesn't understand what Dante Domain Manager is or hasn't come across it, I'll give you a quick overview. So it's a network management tool that enables a few really, really key features that for these larger installations are really key. So it allows your network to be divided up into domains or groups, so you can segregate devices into different groups. So it could be venue A, venue B, venue C. It could be loudspeakers, RF control, or it could be, you know, however you want to divide it up. It envelops you into a user authentication environment. So suddenly you can't just plug your laptop in and start messing about with Dante patches or clocking settings. You know, you need to authenticate, you need to log in. And then those users have different, you know, they have their role-based security. So, you know, Steve from the OB truck outside might have access to view all his feeds, but doesn't have the ability to change the patching to the PA, for example.
So obviously, if you're extending, if you're giving or granting the visiting acts the ability to plug in natively with Dante that they have, you're also potentially exposing yourself to them firing up Dante controller and starting to change things. But now with the authentication, you can say, no, you can contribute, but you can't actually manipulate or change anything. So they can play around in their area in terms of contributing the performance, but the system in-house remains under other people's control and is protected from, shall we say, accidents, mistakes, and
it's not absolutely. It's accidents, and also you get a complete audit trail. So, which I think is one of the biggest features is you know, I just did a thing and it changed that, right? What did I do? And you can go back in and you can go, right, at 1743 Steve logged in and he patched the output to this device. That
was purely I think the mention of Steve there was purely, you know, hypothetical, and there is no proof at all that Steve has ever mispatched anything on that network. I'm absolutely certain.
I have had a nickname on an odd festival job of mispatch, but yeah.
I think the thing we worry about with Steve is when he says he's going to pop in and the audio team go, oh my gosh, the next day we'll have changed the whole thing. So George and the in-house team are running around because Steve's changed it all again. The only thing I'd say, I'm not going to talk about Dante and DDM, but all I was going to say is what is so great is that there's the products out there to allow us to be able to go, okay, we've done this. What do we need next? How can we improve? And that's exactly, as George says, the DDM is really allowing us to actually give us a better story of reporting and all those things. It's really important to us as an in-house team in how we develop and improve things, and that's really, really key to us in how we can improve it all.
Absolutely. If I could just add in as well, another part of this was when we first started with the system, we were prepared for a scenario where not everybody will use the in-house PA. They'll use their PA on the truck potentially, but where they do use the house PA, they might not use the house desk because they've got a show desk of a different type with their show file that they need for their show. So the Glen Sound, the dark 1616M units were what they bought as the analog and digital, analog and AES inputs for a visiting desk to patch into. Now, in a normal world, that's fine because they had up to 16 analog or 16 digital inputs, which is more than anybody else would need on a typical touring show. It's generally, you know, a max left, center, right, fills, subs maybe. But we started using the system more and more for the Soundscape potential, where we start doing immersive audio, where we're now, instead of sending bus-based stuff, we're sending potentially 64 channels straight out of a desk to different parts of the system. All of a sudden, a visiting touring desk, the only way you're going to get those numbers of channels into the system is to have the direct connection straight into the Dante. But we don't want to give a visiting engineer that access throughout the whole Dante, but we still want to allow them to maximize their use of the system. So again, that's where DDM came in and absolutely allowed a safe connection into the system for a touring desk, whilst not compromising the basis of the system settings behind it.
I'll add to that.
Go ahead. Sorry, after you, George.
I was just going to say, I'll add to that, Steve, and say we took it even a step further, and we implemented. There was a concern that when you move to a DDM, you have to unenroll and enroll devices into domains, and we're going, but touring shows just want to rock in, plug in, and go. So we thought, well, actually, we'll expand on the DDM security thing, and we'll add. It's actually was about to go in, and then this situation happened. We'll add a device called a Clark Technic DN9652, which is a double it's a double slot card module that allows you to put 2 cards in. So we put 2 Dante cards in it and then sample rate convert between them. So we've essentially created a whole separate Dante hardware and software world. So one side of that device lives in the DDM world, that can be patched to system inputs, and the other side lives in the touring engineer's world, and he can do whatever he wants with that. Bridge primary and secondary, break it all he wants, but that does not affect the core reliability of the system, and that's really key to. That was one of the big worries about letting any old Tom and Harry plug into the Dante network.
I think he prefers Sir Tom when he's performing there, but I don't know. Is this what you were discussing before about the? I think when you and I first spoke about this was I think you referred it as a gear change. Was that what you were
clock clutch,
not gear,
yeah.
clutch. Thank you.
Yeah,
clock clutch.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So go to Steve's point. You made a point, Steve, in terms of allowing soundscapes to be developed, to be rolled out to the hall. Is that something that was considered before the implementation, or is it only something that you realized that you could do subsequently afterwards, when you actually had everything installed and you saw how the hall behaved, that you were able to implement this additional tweaking of a system for a particular type of event or a particular soundscape?
From my point of view, part of the initial brief, we always knew that it's a multi-purpose hall where the system gets reconfigured into various different ways. And the goal from the Albert Hall was always to design a world-class system. So they wanted to know about the latest technology. Me and Ollie had many chats about should the system be Soundscape fully from the beginning. And I think we were all pretty honest about the fact that the kind of touring shows going through the Albert Hall were just not there ready for every show to have to work on Soundscape yet. The industry's not there yet, so it needs to be primarily a more traditional, if you like, left and right or left, center, right, whatever you want to call it, system. But we designed in that we could upgrade the system to Soundscape very easily with basically the addition of two more hangs coming down from the roof, and we've got Soundscape. We knew that with Dante, we had the ability there to make it very simple. So to turn it into Soundscape, or to turn it into the cinema mode where the hangs get moved back to the rear of the stage and kind of utilized differently. And there's a whole different mixture of routing going on, of EQ, of delays, of matrixing going on. Using Dante and using our R1 system, you load up one different R1 file, go online, press one button, and you go into Dante controller and just load the other preset. And all of that work is done for you in a matter of seconds, that if it was an analog world, oh my word, the amount of repatching you'd have to do, that I would put money on it, you would never do it right, because it's so human error just means you're always going to make a mistake if you're repatching hundreds of different things at once.
Right.
So we'd always designed the system would have the flexibility to be used either for cinema or for Soundscape or whatever other purposes it needs to be used for, to make it as flexible as possible. But I think down the line, obviously, we knew that there were questions that need to be answered down the line, which is where, for instance, the DDM is the perfect thing, where we realized that was a tool that could help us roll this out to a wider user base.
I was talking to Rich, who's one of the staff in the audio team at the Albert Hall, about a month ago, and we were going through some old Dante patch preset files, and we were looking at some of the crazy wacko rear surround box patches that some of the shows had used over the last year, and it is astounding at, oh yeah, well that show wanted to do this with XYZ and this show wants to do this, and yeah, none of us could have ever imagined to the extent that the system's being used in such different, so many different configurations, and Dante's enabled that. You know, it's click click click, that's done, cool.
Yeah, it's an impressive achievement from by everyone concerned. I mean, firstly, the Royal Albert Hall, Ollie, your team, to recognise that, okay, we can't bury our head in the sand. We have something that is precious, but something that needs improving. I think that's laudable. And the fact that you've shared that information with us is I have nothing but respect for that. Well, bravo to recognise that something needed to be done to improve it. Then, obviously, kudos to the engineering done by both D&B, Audio Technic, SFL, Sandy Brown, and so on, in terms of taking the right measurements, planning everything, deciding on what equipment to go in there, actually going in and installing everything, I think is fantastic. And the results speak for themselves, although it's best heard in person. It's really impressive, really impressive.
Yeah, it's worth saying, us guys on the panel, we're all representing teams that are huge. I mean, I know in our company we had, everyone and their dog working on various different, everyone got involved at some point. Towards the end of the project, we were looking at, we were trying to work out a list of who's been involved, and even down to, accounts departments, and, everyone's had a piece of this project at some point. It's
and I think
everyone.
I think George sums that up really well, Julian, but I'll try and get the last word in. You, Steve, will probably interrupt. You talk about, yes, okay, we had an idea, but the slide that Steve's put up doesn't even touch the sides of it. There must have been over 100 people involved with this, and the people who made the amp cupboards, and the people who were making the speakers in Germany from D&B, from all the work. I remember SFL and sketches of how we can do this, how we can do that, from also the in-house audio team, because so this amazing system has been designed and created. We've now got to deliver that, and we don't do that without the audio team. Without all the freelancers, without the advocates. And I think, from an Albert Hall point of view, if I look at it from a client perspective, that is what made this project. Yes, we've got great products, but the people behind the speakers, the cable and the products are what made this project work and why it's been so successful. And actually, there's more to do. There's more we can carry on doing over the next few years, and we won't stop. We'll carry on and we'll keep improving it until we're 100% happy. For me, I wouldn't have been able to have been part of this project without such an amazing team who actually really just achieved everything we wanted, and they did it to such a high level, and you just cannot comprehend that level. And it's something, I'm really proud to be a small part of the team that actually really made it work. And as you can see, that was achieved.
I've done independent research, as it were. So I've gone and sought out independent opinions. I don't have the best musical ear, and so therefore I wouldn't perhaps be able to give a valid appreciation of the improvement. So I've gone and sought out external opinions, and every single one from people who are deeply involved in creating these sorts of environments or benefiting from these sorts of environments. Yes, every single one of them has said, the Royal Albert Hall, it sounds good, full stop. It sounds good. It sounds great. It's very, very good. So I think it's a great reflection on the organizations behind it that have delivered it. The products, yes, the technology, bravo, Dante did that, but D&B's products, Shaw's microphones, the Digicode consoles, it's all great. The teams that put it together, yes, absolutely. It's having the expertise and having the people who can collaborate in a very, very demanding environment. I think that is it's a testament to the work carried out. It works, and it is not in a simple purpose built designer studio where you can just hang everything wherever you want. I think it's impressive. Before we move, we've gone past the hour, but I could carry on for ages, and we will be carrying on a bit longer because we've got the questions to answer. But before we move into the question section, I just want to ask Ollie, in terms of maybe between Ollie and George, you can argue amongst yourselves who's going to answer this. What is in terms of working with the system now, living with the system, having shows come in and use this system, having shows leave and you're using this system, how has life changed from now with D&B and Dante and SFL and the pre-D&B and Dante and SFL days?
I think from a Hall perspective, if I look at how has it changed, operationally, it's changed everything. Again, I know I keep going on about this. We are so busy. And what it has done is allowed us to spend more time on things because we're not rigging a PA on the same points, but actually the box is just a different color and a different manufacturer. We're not doing that every day. So our load-ins are safer. The artists can get more rehearsal time. One of the things I learned on this project very early on, Steve mentioned about these advocates, and before anyone was involved, I sat with these advocates, and many of them had done work at the hall, and they said, oh, I've never been to the circle, I've never been to the gallery. And I said, what do you mean? How do you know how it sounds? I said, well, I don't have time, because, you know, I come in, the guys are still rigging the speakers, I hear it from the desk. And I couldn't believe that. Actually now there are engineers who will go up and walk the circle. And you know what? That's one, because they want to hear it, but two, because they care so much about what we've done that they're getting involved as well. So our engagement with the industry, I really hope, is so positive. We've got so many people giving us feedback that actually we take in a really positive way and we improve things. So the way the building now operates is completely changed because of what we've been able to do with this sound system and obviously the audience experience. So for me, we've been able to slow the pace down but improve the quality of any show that comes in, whether that's even from the lighting, because the lighting guys got more time because the speakers aren't in the way, or, you know, vice versa or whatever. And that's significantly improved for us. That would be my biggest achievement. I don't know about George and what he sees, but that would be how I approach it.
I think I'd agree. Ollie. For the few shows that we've taken in as a visiting production company, you know, it's effortless, and just having you guys in house, knowing you've got it nailed, you'll sort your inputs here. Here's the system. Turn it on, turn it up. Perfect. Even from a supplier point of view, it's easy. It's just easy, and it's one less thing to worry about. It's one less thing to have to stress about. Oh, the PA point's from the wrong place. Oh, someone's forgotten the soccer loom. You know, it's just easy.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much for contributing your experiences and your information on this project. I'd now like to try and open it up to some of the questions that were posed or some of the topics raised in the Q&A section. First of all, shout out to Gus. Thank you for letting us know that all our microphones sound great. Obrigado. There's one question here which I've got a slide that I will address immediately. M. Calhoun asked, who are Dante's competitors? I could flippantly say, we have no competitors, but I will put up a quick slide which will explain the competitors and the difference between us in terms of market penetration and market share. So this is a slide showing the number of audio products per protocol. The different players in there are Dante, ourselves, CobraNet, Ravenna, AVB, and then there's a smorgasbord of other lesser known audio over IP solutions. The key differentiator here that you see is the adoption of Dante, far outstripping even the sum of all the other competing audio over IP solutions. So that's in answer to M. Calhoun's question, because it was a cheap shot and I'm going to take it. There's a question here from Richard Delight, which I think we've kind of covered, which is, do you supplement your house system with hired kit, or do you always manage client needs with your house system? I think I know the answer, but I'll throw it over to the experts.
I think the word client needs is the key word there. We will adapt as we need to adapt. So of course we've got our audio manager calls it a toolkit. So I think George mentioned it. We talk about a rock and pop. We can change the front fields on a rock and pop, or we can change them to cater for an orchestral event as well. But if we do sub-hire kit in, because we've only got so much kit, but that isn't from a speaker system point of view. That's more, we need lots of handhelds, or we need more mics or something like that. The actual speaker system very rarely changes unless there's something like Steve's spoken about, Soundscape. So for example, Nutcracker, our ballet, we put Soundscape in, and obviously there's things that need to change for that. And occasionally we might add the odd sub for a larger rock and pop event, but the majority of the time the system is designed to work and stay and cater for 95% of shows, and it does. But but stage elements and things like that, yes, we do supply those in.
Okay. Okay. We've talked about one of the questions that came in from another Julian, but this is Julian Tinau or Julian Tinau. There were some acoustic treatment done to the Royal Albert Hall several decades ago in terms of the mushrooms and so forth. Were there any additional acoustic treatments done to the performance space?
So the mushrooms were put in in the 60s, made of fiberglass, and canopies over the stage as well. And there's been various changes throughout. There's about 85 mushrooms now. The canopies over the stage are the existing canopies that were put in years ago. The most recent thing we did, and we spoke about this, is a really good question, because we said, do we install a sound system first, or do we install and improve the acoustics, or do we do it at the same time? Now, of course, I would love to have done it at the same time, but that would have been impossible. So we took the decision, let's get the sound system in first. But as Steve mentioned, we did so much work with Stanley Brown, and we don't talk about them much in this, but they were so key to this whole project. What we've done now is one of the areas where there was a real, as one of our trustees calls it, the big bounce, was certainly in the gallery on the back wall. It's a really hard surface. And so only in the last 6 months have we completed it, but we now have drapes in the gallery, which we can deploy. There's a track in each thing. It takes 10 minutes to close them, open them, and the all amplified events have the drapes in. That is kind of the next stage, and that has made a massive improvement from the sound perspective. There's other things we're looking at over the next few years, and we've got plans to really improve the acoustics, but the first stage was sound system, second stage drapes, and now we're looking at all the other areas. And Stanley Brown only in the last few months have just finished a report with the sound system in and where the areas that need improving are from an acoustic point of view. But the drapes have gone in and actually made a massive difference again. That's the next stage, and they have made a big difference. I don't know if Steve wants to go geekier on that, but yeah, I think they've really improved it to another level.
Okay.
Yeah, without a doubt, the drapes up in the gallery is the area where you get the most spill from the PA, pointing up there where you've got the hard surfaces. Everywhere else in the Albert Hall is you're pointing speakers at the audience, who are large bags of water, who do a very good job of absorbing sound generally. But it's that gallery area where you've got the big hard surfaces. Now you have to be careful because those big hard surfaces for the unamplified shows are really important. You can't muck around with them too much, because you will screw the performance for the unamplified shows, which it's beautiful up there. If you go to the proms to an unamplified show and just sit up there and see how people are quite often just sat against the back wall, they're not even watching the show, they're up there marking school books or something. Teachers go in and just, they want to be in the environment and take in kind of in the background the performance that's happening. It's a quite special place. So the Stanley Brown guys did a great job of reducing the reflections there for the more amplified shows, but being able to pull the curtains out to keep the ambience for those unamplified shows. That's so special.
Right. Yeah, it's fantastic. I love hearing this. There's a question which I think I can answer very quickly, but I will give it to any one of the panel that are networking specialists or more ordinate technically than myself. James asked, do you find yourself ever hitting a bandwidth limit on the network when you start adding things like radio mics to get the front of house, as well as the drive to the amplifiers in the soundscape?
After that one, no, we did the maths. We made sure we worked out where the flows were going. We mapped out the network very early on in schematics, and we mapped out how many flows we were going to need. Did the maths, worked it out. No, the whole network's gigabit and plenty of capacity. We've put QoS in, some good QoS rules, just in case to keep clocking. But no limitations at all. Most of that control data is tiny packets of data.
It's tiny.
So yeah, so it's the Dante audio flows are definitely the substantial traffic, but even that is nowhere near saturating the gigabit connections.
Yeah. Good, thank you. In terms of the products, the speakers, they are obviously connected via. They're powered. They're driven by amplifiers, or are they powered speakers?
Correct. They are passive loudspeakers. Well, most they are driven elsewhere, I should say.
Okay.
They're driven by a selection of DMB amplifiers, depending on which particular speaker you're talking about, from 10Ds, 30Ds, and D80s, and they get fed AES3 by the D&V DS10s, which take Dante in and convert that to 8 streams of 2-channel AES.
Okay.
This is maybe a good bit for a sales plug for D&B. The one thing that was really nice that we do with the Dante side, so with our DS10 Dante to AES bridge, we're using some unused bits on the AES stream to actually take the Dante channel name and pass that to the amplifier over the AES cable. So from a problem solving point of view, the boxes alone, when you're looking at 338 speakers in the boxes and trying to route the right signal to the right amplifier, I can look at the amplifier and the amplifier will tell me which Dante channel has been given to it, despite the fact it's not being fed Dante, it's been fed AES. And it's a really useful feature of a DS10 when you're problem solving, trying to go, it's not making noise. Oh, let me just have a look. Yeah, patch the wrong channel to it on the Dante. And it's a nice little feature that really helps you out in problem solving of such a large network.
It's useful on gigs all the time, but like you say, Steve, really came to its own when you've got 336, whatever it is, little boxes in little rooms. It's invaluable.
How many amplifiers were installed? I mean, we know the speakers. The speakers is a huge number. How many amplifiers have you got installed in the Royal Albert Hall? That question came in from Ollie.
There's more than 2. Do you know what? I cannot honestly remember. This. I'm looking at an array calc at the moment that doesn't tell me all of the extra amps doing like the stage monitors and things like that. But I've got absolutely wrong numbers. I can tell you that's in that array calc. So no,
George, help him out. Can you help him out? How many amps are in there?
It's got to be it's got to be between 100 and 250, something like that. Probably close to 250.
Well, you were right, Steve. 64. There are more than 2.
Yeah, there's about 35-ish doing the boxes, because there's 3 cupboards, and I think there's between 11 and 15 amps in each cupboard. So there's between 35 and 40, let's say, amps doing the boxes. Then we've got in the amp room, there's 2 large amp racks full of 30Ds in there. So there'll be 48U amp racks, I think. Might even be bigger than that. There's probably...
Pat Smith has just piped up and said it's...
I was waiting for Pat. Yeah, there we go.
64 4-channel amplifiers, plus deployable amps. So front fill solution is not included in that number.
Yeah, there's two D20 3-way amp racks that they have for stage monitors and front fills as well on the stage, on top of that number from Pat.
Okay. Had to get that one in there, Steve. Well done. A question from Guillaume Forêt. Great name, Guillaume. In terms of the maximum latency for a venue of that size, what is the maximum latency that you have to enable on some of the elements?
We've got 2 milliseconds on all devices. That's not quite true. There's some are on 1, but most devices are on 2 milliseconds.
Okay.
So that's 2 milliseconds on Dante.
On Dante.
Plus, then you've got obviously the latency of, let's say, your Digicode desk, then the orange box, then you hit the Dante with your 2 milliseconds. On the other end of that, we've got the delay through the DS100, which is, from memory, I can't remember, about a millisecond. And then depending on the amplifiers, the main amplifiers running the main hangs doing array processing means that there's 5.9 milliseconds inherent latency on the amplifiers for the array processed part. But so far, the big pit within that as well is in terms of the total latency, you have to take that into account with the prime area that you're trying to cover, where that's an issue, is front fills, because they're so close to the audience and so close to the performers. But it's also with the trim height of the PA. The Albert Hall is a very tall venue, so you end up having to trim the PA pretty high to get out of sight lines, get out of lighting shots. But also I argued every bit that I could to get it as low as possible to make sure that any latency plus time arrival through the air of the PA being high, we could reduce that as much as possible.
Right.
So it's quite a complex thing when you talk about latency in a system plus time of flight through the air of the sound itself.
Yeah. The distance between the, I mean, that's, yeah, so we're talking about a sum of those various parts, all adding up to whatever the particular latency for any particular area or any particular speaker. So hopefully that answers that question. I think this one is either again to George or to Steve. The distance between the speakers and the amplifiers, how far away are they located from each other?
I can't remember the longest run. Steve, you might remember.
It's in the roof, I think. The gallery, there was an amount of amplifiers in the roof for the gallery, but some of them also had to come from an amp rack elsewhere. I think we were at 100 and I'm going to guess 140 meters maybe was one of the longest runs in the roof. We chatted with SFL. We had lots of chats about what size cable we should use. And what we decided on was that everywhere would get 4mm cable, so that SFL were buying one type of cable to keep the costs down and just buying in bulk. But we were making marker points where we took into account the impedance of the speaker on the back of the amplifier, how long the cable run was, and then chose appropriately to double cores up. So we were basically creating 2 lots of 4mm cable for the really long runs where we had low impedances on the speakers.
Okay. I think there's a couple of other questions around networking switch brands and models. Did you pick on one particular manufacturer for a choice? You don't have to mention which one it is, but did you elect one particular one, or are you using just a couple of different manufacturers from different places without really a care?
No, it's all Cisco SG350 of varying sizes. We picked them chiefly because we use them in rental stock extensively. So they've both got the trust, and we had to rubber stamp, as an SFL point of view, we had to rubber stamp this and go, we are going to guarantee this works. So from our point of view, we're going to use what we know. So it's both obviously Dante compliant, you can disable EEE, all that usual stuff. But also the flexibility of Cisco stuff rather than some of their competitors was a huge advantage, being able to create lag groups, spanning tree stuff, creating custom port configurations. That was all really key. So yeah, certainly couldn't have been any old random switch, but we chose that chiefly because we know it well.
We had lots of fun discussions, didn't we, George, about
we did.
I think before SFL were kind of won the tender, I was being asked by people, what switch should we put in? I am not a network guru like George whatsoever. So Cisco switches, I fully admit, can do huge amounts and are totally impressive, but I am not the person to put my name against knowing how to set those up for any kind of protocol. So I was very much saying, look, I can only say, I know how to use a Luminex switch because it's paint by colors. And I personally love the Luminex switches for my level of knowledge on switches. But it was where, with discussions with the Albert Hall, where I'd go, yes, great, I'll rubber stamp SFL using Cisco switches, as long as it's fully their responsibility to set it up, because I don't have a clue.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing I noticed, where from Dante, I hear a lot of people kind of give bad mouths to Dante sometimes about it not working properly. And I don't know, 9.999 times out of 10, every issue seems to be people playing with network switches in a way that they don't know how to play with them, causing their own issues. And it's not a Dante issue, it's a switch network topology issue. Yeah,
I'm sure Kieran would agree with me here. I preface every email I ever send to Ordinate with, please point out what I've done wrong. It's always it's always the user.
There's a rather unfortunate quote in our office in Australia where I'm extolling the virtues of the most simple switch going, because honestly, it's normally what people add to the mix rather than what's lacking in the switch fabric to start with. And I think the quote says something about buy more important things like beer instead.
And on that bombshell at 5:30 on a Friday, I think we're going, unless anyone has anything further to say and comment and add, I'd like to draw this webinar to a close. Anything else from the panelists? Okay. Thank you all so very, very much for participating in this, in sharing your information and giving up of your time. Thank you, the attendees, for listening and staying with us through to an hour and a half of this, which I hope you've enjoyed and found beneficial. Please, everybody, have a good evening, a good weekend, and in these times, everybody, please stay safe. With that, I'm going to close the meeting down. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you again for joining this webinar.